Here is the brutal truth that our industry professionals need to surface to their marketing VPs immediately. If marketing's massive multi-million dollar personalization strategy does not include the customer's native language and their specific cultural norms, it isn't personalization. It is just targeted, arrogant broadcasting. Think about the cognitive dissonance for the user in that scenario. You get an email. The brand knows your name. They know exactly what enterprise tier you are on. They know you just abandoned a cart or failed to complete an onboarding flow. They are watching you. But the email is written in a language you only vaguely understand, or it uses a culturally inappropriate, overly aggressive tone. The personalization instantly backfires. It goes from feeling intimate to feeling invasive and arrogant. It actively says to the buyer, "We have harvested your data, but we don't actually know you, and we frankly don't respect your culture." So what's the catch here? Why is this disconnect between marketing and localization so incredibly common? It is entirely because of how localization teams are reporting their value. If you walk into a quarterly business review and you put up a slide deck reporting on words translated per month, or translation memory leverage percentages, or how much you saved the company by switching machine translation engines, you have already lost the room. You have lost the executive's attention. You are speaking the language of a factory floor manager, not a strategic business partner. The narrative has to shift entirely. You have to stop talking about operational inputs and start talking about language influence revenue. You need to pull the data directly from those marketing platforms. You need to show how cultural fluency directly reduces customer acquisition cost, the precise price you pay to win a new buyer in target regions. You need to demonstrate how a culturally localized onboarding flow increases lifetime value and reduces early stage churn. You aren't just managing glossaries. You are building deep, culturally resonant trust. And trust is the only currency that actually scales globally. Let's really drill down into the mechanics of that trust. We need to explore the fundamental difference between grammatical compliance and cultural compliance, because this is where the rubber meets the road. Let's look at baseline customer expectations and power dynamics using the customer service flow as the ultimate stress test. In the North American market, the foundational philosophy of consumerism is often incredibly casual and peer-to-peer. It is a highly transactional dynamic. The customer pays money, the business provides a service, and they speak to each other like equals. If the service is bad, the business compensates the customer. It's a level playing field. But shift that exact same lens to a market like South Korea. The prevailing business mindset is entirely different. It requires an elevated level of deference rooted in deep traditional hierarchy. The customer is not a casual peer in a transaction. The customer occupies a formalized, elevated status to whom the vendor owes immense, almost limitless respect. So imagine a casual Australian software company expanding into Seoul. They have their rigid global standard. They take their standard customer support macros, the ones built on that casual mate-to-mate dynamic, and they run them through an enterprise machine translation tool, or even have a human translator do a technically flawless, grammatically compliant translation. It is a catastrophic localization failure. The words are correct. The syntax is fine. But by treating the South Korean enterprise user as a casual buddy rather than honoring the strict corporate hierarchy, you are actively signaling that your brand doesn't understand their fundamental rules of engagement. You are unintentionally insulting them at the exact moment they are asking for help. And let's look at the absolute highest friction point for this exact dynamic: billing and payments. Asking a client for money is the most sensitive touchpoint in the entire customer lifecycle. It touches deeply ingrained cultural norms regarding honor and financial obligation. The automated dunning process, those software systems that chase down late payments, is where trust is most frequently lost. Let's look at the US market again. The standard workflow in an automated billing platform is to send a blunt, proactive payment warning 30 days out. Hey, your invoice is due soon. Update your card to avoid service interruption. It is direct. It carries a subtle pay or get cutoff tone. And in the US, nobody blinks. It's viewed as helpful account management. It's just business. Now take that exact same logic, translate it flawlessly, and let the automated system trigger it for an enterprise client in a highly hierarchical Asian market. What happens? It is a disaster. Receiving a blunt, automated payment demand early in the billing cycle is interpreted as a profound loss of face and an insult to the client's integrity. It implies that you, the vendor, do not trust them to fulfill their honorable obligation to pay on time. It is a massive breach of the elevated customer dynamic. The customer will likely pay the bill, but it shatters the relationship instantly. They are totally gone. They will immediately start looking for a local, culturally compliant competitor who understands how to treat them with appropriate respect. This highlights the incredible weight of microcopy. A simple automated lifecycle email might only be 50 words long, but those 50 words carry the emotional weight of the entire brand relationship. Adapting this requires so much more than linguistic QA. It means localization professionals have to get out of their translation management systems and partner directly with the finance department and with engineering to completely alter the hard-coded trigger logic. You have to go upstream. You might have to fight to change the development sprint so that your sensitive regional markets don't even receive a warning until the bill is actually past due. And even then, the tone has to be deeply apologetic for even having to bring it up. This level of strategic intervention requires a robust, agile localization infrastructure. You need a team that can move fast and influence cross-functional workflows, because what happens when that central process is viewed by the rest of the company as a black box? Too slow, too bureaucratic, completely disconnected from commercial reality. That brings us to the absolute nightmare scenario for global brand managers, the threat of shadow localization. Shadow localization is the silent killer of global brand equity. It happens when regional teams feel like the central localization desk is a bottleneck. They submit a ticket, and it just vanishes into the void. Their SLAs are completely misaligned with their go-to-market reality. So out of sheer desperation to hit their quotas, they go rogue. Let's walk through a high-stakes scenario. Picture a regional sales director in São Paulo. It is Thursday afternoon. They have just secured a massive enterprise-level pitch for tomorrow morning. This deal will literally make their entire quarter, but they need a localized pitch deck. They ping the central team, and the central team quotes a standard 1-week turnaround. The director doesn't have a week, they have 14 hours. They aren't going to cancel the meeting, and they know pitching an enterprise Brazilian client in English puts them at a severe disadvantage. So what do? Speed over brand governance. They take the master English collateral, which often contains highly sensitive pre-release intellectual property, and they dump it straight into an unapproved free public AI translator, which, by the way, is a massive data privacy and security compliance violation right there. A CSO's worst nightmare. But the sales director doesn't care about compliance. They care about their commission. Then they take that AI output and spend 2 hours tweaking it based on their own bilingual skills. And the result? It might actually be technically accurate. The director might even use perfect local industry slang that the central team sitting at HQ would never have known. But it is completely off-brand. Completely. Because a sales director is not a trained brand custodian. They are a salesperson. They might use a hyper-aggressive hard sell tone that works for them personally on the floor, but completely violates your corporate guidelines. Suddenly, your high-end luxury software brand sounds like a discount aggressive retailer in the LATAM market. And if you scale that up, if you have 50 reps in 20 countries all doing their own shadow localization because your central process is too slow, you don't have one global brand anymore. You have 1,000 fragmented, localized micro brands that all sound completely schizophrenic. And this leads directly into the customer acquisition cost waste loop. This is where shadow localization actually destroys the bottom line. And this is the metric you bring to your CFO. Imagine a local field marketing team in Mexico City throws a highly tailored, culturally fluent VIP event. They bypass central localization to do it, so the event feels incredibly local. The prospect attends, feels deeply understood, loves the local flavor, and decides to engage. They sign up for a trial. They enter the digital funnel. And boom, they are immediately hit with the central team's work. They are suddenly navigating an interface utilizing aggressive American sales copy that was poorly machine translated 3 years ago and never updated. The tone is jarring. The user interface is confusing. The help center reads like a robot. You spent massive marketing dollars to acquire the lead locally through culturally fluent shadow efforts, but you churn them digitally because the product journey was built strictly for the headquarters market. It is a massive leaky bucket. Inconsistency destroys trust instantly. The customer thinks, if they can't even get their software to speak my language properly, how can I trust them to handle my enterprise data? This is exactly why those architectural guardrails we talked about earlier are so critical. You need to build an agile internal localization desk that eliminates the need for your regional teams to go rogue in the first place. You need modular content and approved translation memories integrated directly into their sales enablement tools, creating workflows that match the actual speed of local business. If localization is a bottleneck, shadow localization will always win. But the dynamic of speed, bottlenecks, and scale is currently undergoing the most radical transformation in the history of the industry. We have to address the major disruptor, artificial intelligence and large language models, or LLMs. We are entering the age of speaking human in an era of automated intelligence. Historically, localization was defined entirely by constraint. You had a limited budget, a limited timeline, and a limited pool of qualified human translators. So you tiered your content. You only localized your tier 1 marketing assets for your top 3 markets. Everything else was left in English, or maybe you ran it through a basic machine translation tool if you were feeling adventurous. But LLMs have fundamentally rewritten the economics of our industry. They have vaporized the historical bottlenecks of speed and human bandwidth. We now possess the capability to translate absolutely everything. Every user review, every dynamic web page, every internal chat message, every obscure knowledge base article, instantaneously, at massive scale, for fractions of a cent. So if the old constraint is completely eliminated, what is the new challenge? The strategic question for localization professionals is no longer, can we localize this? The answer to that is always yes, the API can handle it. The new, infinitely more complex question is, should we? That is the crux of it. Because just because you can run your entire massive digital footprint through an AI in 3 seconds doesn't mean you are actually creating value. In fact, it creates a massive new risk, the frictionless backlash. Let's look at the underlying architecture of these models to understand why AI fundamentally lacks human discernment. It doesn't understand empathy, it doesn't understand historical context, and it certainly doesn't understand the nuance of deep cultural hierarchy. An LLM is at its core a highly advanced token prediction engine. And crucially, we have to look at the training data. These models are predominantly trained on Western, English-centric internet data. So the vector space of the AI inherently groups concepts based on Western cultural norms. When you ask it to predict the wording for a delicate, face-saving corporate rejection in a Middle Eastern market, it frequently maps it to the underlying structure of a direct, blunt American refusal, completely stripping away the cultural padding that makes the interaction acceptable. Unless you are utilizing highly specific fine-tuning and advanced models like retrieval augmented generation or RAG to actively inject that cultural context, the AI will default to an English-centric worldview translated into local vocabulary. It is generic. It is grammatically perfect, but culturally barren. And as this generic, grammatically perfect translation becomes virtually free and instantly ubiquitous across the entire internet, enterprise companies are being forced into a corner. When every brand, from the largest Fortune 500 enterprise to a guy running a drop shipping site out of his garage, can instantly translate their website into 50 languages with perfect syntax, grammatical correctness is no longer a competitive advantage. It is the absolute baseline expectation. And when the baseline is perfect, frictionless, automated translation, everything starts to sound exactly the same. We get a homogenized global brand experience. It is the uncanny valley at a massive global scale. Before we get into the final takeaways, just a reminder that you can find more strategic insights and practical guidance exactly like this at locanuku.com, your home for navigating these exact industry shifts. Now, let's pull all of this together and focus on the actionable localization insights you need to bring back to your teams. What we are seeing in the industry is that consumers are incredibly savvy. They are already developing a radar for AI-generated localization. They sense the lack of soul, the lack of a cultural anchor. What I predict is an impending, massive consumer backlash against this frictionless homogenization. Buyers are going to crave authenticity. They are going to demand to know that a human being who understands their reality was involved in the process. Which brings us to the ultimate conclusion of this industry shift. In a world where automated, perfectly translated communication is the baseline, hyper-localized, undeniably human, handcrafted brand experiences will become the ultimate luxury status symbol of the future. Think of it as the bespoke, custom-tailored suit versus fast fashion. AI provides the fast fashion. It covers you, it functions, it's cheap, and it scales infinitely. But human-driven cultural fluency is the bespoke suit. It fits perfectly to the contours of the local market. It signals high status, and it demonstrates a profound level of care and investment. The enterprise companies that win the next decade will not be the ones who use AI to cut their localization budgets to zero. The winners will be the ones who use LLMs to automate the baseline, the Tier 3 and Tier 4 commodity translations, and then reallocate those massive budget savings to double down on deep cultural fluency for their core interactions. They will leverage localization as the primary mechanism by which their brand learns to speak human in a sea of algorithms. They will reposition localization professionals from operational QA checkers into cultural strategists, anthropologists, and revenue engineers. Protecting the brand isn't about enforcing a rigid, monolithic standard from HQ. It is about ensuring that every local iteration resonates with profound, undeniably human authenticity. To summarize our strategic roadmap today, we diagnose the uncanny valley of corporate communication, that jarring disconnect when syntax is perfect but cultural context is absent. We tore down the lethal trap of the monolithic global standard, showing how rigid central control creates sterile brand experiences. We instituted the framework of cultural fluency, establishing non-negotiable architectural guardrails while allowing massive local freedom at the edges. We proved that marketing's personalization and your localization efforts are exactly the same pursuit. We mapped the deep cultural chasms between casual, transactional mindsets and highly deferential, hierarchical models, proving that hard-coded workflows like billing can trigger catastrophic cultural insults. We exposed the commercial threat of shadow localization, where slow central processes force regional teams to go rogue, fracturing the brand and creating a toxic customer acquisition cost waste loop. And finally, we navigated the AI paradigm shift, realizing that as basic translation becomes a free commodity, human nuance becomes the ultimate luxury differentiator. And this was your industry update from Locanuku, localization news you can use. The biggest takeaway today is a provocative thought for you to mull over as you head back to your strategy sessions.